After speaker shares, this is a discussion meeting. Please limit your sharing to your experience only with the topic of discussion. We ask that you do not use this meeting for resolving your problems outside of your sobriety. We encourage you to discuss such matters with your sponsor or others after the meeting. If you begin sharing outside the topic of discussion or sharing your opinion rather than experience, the chairperson may ask you to stop so others may speak. Please limit your sharing to 3 to 5 minutes so others have a chance to speak. And this is Meg.
Hi guys, I'm Meg. I'm a heroin addict.
Hey.
Grateful to be here tonight. So I always start off by saying I have a sponsor who has a sponsor. I have worked the steps. I worked them again, and I work them again. I take other women through the steps. I have a home group. It's the Get Well group of Heroin Anonymous. We meet in Albany on Friday nights. I have a higher power in my life today that I choose to call God. And I start out by saying all of those things because those were the suggestions that were given to me when I came in here. And when I came in here, I had no clue how to live a life without alcohol and drugs. And when I was finally willing to take suggestions, those are the suggestions that were given to me, and they've helped me put together a couple days. So I grew up in a good family. I'm from down in Catskill, and I had 2 parents that loved me and gave me everything that I needed and most of what I wanted. Although I'm an alcoholic and an addict, so what I always wanted more. But I had 2 parents that loved me and taught me morals and values, and I was raised in a good home, but I believe that I was born with this disease, and so it doesn't matter what upbringing I was brought up in. I had the behaviors of an alcoholic and an addict from a very young age. The fears and insecurities and manipulation and lying, and I stole from Hallmark when I was like 5, and my mom tried to teach me a lesson and bring me to the police station, and so just those behaviors from a really young age. I want what I want when I want it. And I have a sister that's 5 years older than me, and we've always had kind of a competitive rivalry, and she always was kind of what I refer to as a bully. She just was always like mean to me, and I just wanted my older sister to like love and accept me, and I could never get that. And so those feelings of not being good enough, that is a theme through my story, being less than, and feeling like I wasn't enough. And I carried that all through my childhood, all through middle and high school. I compared myself to others, and I always fell short. So when I was a junior in high school, my father passed away of a heart attack suddenly, and my whole world kind of turned upside down. It completely gutted me. He was the disciplinarian in the home, so I hadn't been allowed to go. I had like an 11 o'clock curfew at 16 years old. I hadn't been allowed to go out to parties or do anything. And so when my father passed away, and I didn't want to feel the feelings, and I wanted to numb the pain, and he wasn't there to stop me from going to parties, that is what I turned to. And alcohol, I found alcohol, and alcohol was the answer for me when I was 16 and needed it, and I believe that alcohol and drugs cured my alcoholism until it didn't. I believe that this disease lies between my ears, and that the voices in my head were quieted when I drank or smoked pot, and So anyway, I chased that for years. Like I said, so I started to smoke pot every day, would go out to, keg parties every weekend and just, black out. I loved blacking out. It was like the next morning someone would be like, oh, this is what you did. And I'd be like, oh, I don't remember. Sorry. It kind of like excused me. Legal consequences started pretty early for me. I got pulled over leaving a party when I was a senior in high school and ended up losing my license for 6 months. And so when I went to college, I didn't have a license, and I kind of wore that with pride. I thought it made me cool, and so I would like go around announcing it, like, oh yeah, I have a DWI, and so it kind of gave me this party girl reputation, and so I had to live up to it. And I spent 5 years in college just surrounding myself with people that drank more than me, surrounding myself with people that smoked more pot than me. And it helped me believe for a very long time that I did not have a problem. And basically alcohol and pot stopped working for me. And so I turned to hydrocodone, and hydrocodone stopped working for me, so I turned to Oxycontin, and eating those stopped working, so I started sniffing them. And then when that didn't work anymore, heroin and crack was my answer, and it was like it was always like the answer, right? Like, I have arrived, like this will solve all my problems. And I ended up giving away, ruining anything that got in the way of my use. I lost my job. I lost the relationship I was in for 10 years. I lost all, my friends. I gave those things away because they got in the way of me getting high every day. And when I decided that my boyfriend was the problem, because I was really good at that too. I could, everything was everyone else's problem. And so when I decided he was the problem, I decided to leave him and move back in with my mom. And, once I was under her roof, I couldn't hide how bad things were. And so, that kind of freaked her out. And so that started a couple geographic cures for me. I went to Boston, I went to Florida, and I would basically wear out my welcome. When I went to Florida, I brought one Suboxone with me, and to cure my withdrawals, I drank vodka in my coffee until I passed out at night. And like, that is how I got through Florida. And so, and that's all I knew. So I would wear out my welcome and get sent a flight home and end up back at my mom's. And my one and only attempt at detox was in November of 2011. And I went to get my mother off my back. I went because I thought she was going to kick me out. And, I believe that we can only get sober for ourselves, right? Like, I hadn't suffered enough pain. I was there for all the wrong reasons. And so it didn't work. I left after 6 days once I started feeling better, and I left and went right back to it. And, I would disappear for days at a time and, be smoking crack and doing as much heroin as I could get my hands on. And my mother would, blow up my cell phone. And to me, it was just ruining my high, right? Like, but for her, I've come to realize, like, she didn't know if I was dead on the side of the road, and so one night I had come home from like a 4-day bender, and so all of my rigs and spoons and empty bags and cottons and all my stuff was out on the dining room table. She had searched my room, and there was a laundry basket full of clothes. And she said, I don't know where you're going to go, but you cannot stay here. And That was 3 weeks before Christmas, 2011. And I was pissed. I could not believe my enabling mother kicked me out. And it was like, I'm going to show her. And so I spent the next 9 months homeless, doing what I needed to do to get a place to stay, putting myself in some pretty dangerous situations to get a place to stay. And, staying with drug dealers, and just basically I would couch surf or do what I needed to do until I would steal from them and get kicked out. And, that became the routine. And in the summer of 2012, I was staying in like this boarding house, and I was sharing a room with a bunch of disgusting people, or I was sharing a bathroom with like all these gross people, and I was like, I don't belong here, and like, in my mind I didn't, but like in reality I did not shower, I did not brush my teeth, I did not wash my clothes, I did not eat, I was completely malnourished. I was like 90 pounds soaking wet, and so I belonged right there. And I had a bed and a TV, and it was the middle of summer, and it was hot as hell in that room, and I would wake up and I would be dope sick, and 5 minutes would feel like an eternity, and I would be crawling out of my skin. And so I could not stay in that room. It was so bad. And so I would get up and I would walk to town to bum a cigarette, to smoke cigarettes out of the ashtray outside Cumberland Farms, steal from people's purses in Walmart, just do what I had to do to like get a fix, and at this point I started getting picked up for possession in the 7th, petty larceny. I just kept getting misdemeanors and slaps on the wrist, and just kept getting let go, and it was just like a nuisance. And that helped me believe that I was invincible. And one day I was walking to town, and there was this house that this old couple was always out in their yard gardening, and their van was always in the driveway. And this one day I walked by, and they weren't there, and I thought, I bet those old people have something worth money in their house. And so I went in their house and got $7,000 in gold from their house, and that just like triggered a whole new addiction for me. For the next 2 months, every day, every other day, depending on how much heroin I put in my arms and crack I smoked, I would rob houses. And I had a hard run in the end, but it did not matter. I would have $10,000 in my pocket, and I'd be thinking about when I run out of this. It was never enough. It was never enough. And like, I need to remember that. And so on September 13th, 2012, I was caught coming out of a house and arrested for 3 felonies and 8 misdemeanors. And, the gig was up. I spent 11 hours in the sheriff's department, and when they booked me in, they told me I had 1 phone call to make, and I did not make a phone call. I did not believe that I had anyone in that moment. I had burnt every bridge with everyone that loved me, everyone that I loved, and I just felt so alone. And when they locked me into that jail cell that night, I was just overwhelmed with loneliness and hopelessness and defeat and insanity and shame and anger and guilt, and just all of these feelings that for the first time in 15 years, I did not have anything to numb it with. And that was a really harsh reality for me. And, I spent the next 8 days detoxing on that jail cell floor, and it was awful. I will never forget that, but I never want to forget that, because I never want to go through that again, and I don't have to if I, don't pick up. So I ended up doing 10 months in county jail and was released to a halfway house up in the Capital Region. And, I was so grateful, right? Like, I was facing time, And I ended up being given like this opportunity, and I left jail, and I was so grateful, right? Like, I was grateful for a cigarette. I was grateful for a piece of pizza. I was grateful to be walking on grass and not, you know, the cement of the rec yard. And I just had all this gratitude. But unfortunately, I was left with myself, right? And like, we put the drugs and alcohol down, and this disease is still within me, and it's still, you know, between my ears. And so I got in trouble at the Elizabeth house. So I got in trouble at this house, and I almost got kicked out, and I hadn't had a drink or a drug in 14 months, and I was like, and like, that's when I realized, like, I am the problem. Drugs and alcohol are not my problem. I am. And like, that was a huge turning point for me. That is when I became willing, right? Like, so I had that gratitude, and then when the pain got great enough, I had the willingness. And when, you know, that I had that beautiful moment of like desperation and willingness meet, and I started to go to meetings for the right reason, to listen to the message. I asked a woman to be my sponsor, and she's asked me what I've asked many women since, like, are you willing to do whatever it takes to stay sober? And I was, you know, and I dove into the steps, and, you know, I had a really hard time with steps 2 and 3. I sat on them for about 2 years. I did not believe that God was going to keep a needle out of my arm. I just didn't believe it. And, you know, I would read We Agnostics. I would read, I would do everything my sponsor told me to do. I would pray, even though I didn't believe that I was praying to anything. And, you know, she would just tell me, believe that I believe. And I would just listen to people in meetings. And I ended up just having this moment of clarity that, you know, I would not be alive. I do not believe that I would be alive if I did not get arrested. If God did for me what I could not do for myself, and yanked me out of society. And when I saw that was God doing for me what I couldn't do for myself, I just had like this awakening, like, maybe there is a God, and like, maybe he did save my life, you know? And so I started to believe, and like, that helps me on a daily basis. Like, when things do not go my way, the sooner that I can accept that it is part of God's plan for me, the sooner like I find that peace, right? And so then I go on to, you know, steps 4 and 5, and had this complete revelation in seeing like that 4th column. You know, I held on to anger and resentments my whole life. And when I did that 4th column and saw that I played a part in every single one of them, I was like, what? You know, like, I was the victim of these people in my head my whole life. And it just gave me this complete shift in perspective, right? Like, nothing in my past changed, but the way that I viewed it changed. And that just gave me so much freedom. And I was in the middle of my 4th step when I ended up graduating the Elizabeth house and going to supportive living. So I spent my first 2 years in jails and institutions, and you know, I kicked and screamed the whole way, but I believe that I needed all of that to build a foundation to go out into the real world, right? Because like, we get sober not to like stay in an HA bubble, but to like go out and like apply these principles in our daily lives out there. And so I was able to build this beautiful foundation. And you know, so you know, then I move into my own apartment, and that's when we started HA in Albany. And being of service has saved my life. it has just, HA has just given me so many opportunities to be of service. And, there's nothing that gives me more joy today than seeing the light bulb go on for another woman. Making amends to my list. I've sat in front of, my mother, people that have known me, people that, saw me get sober, people that have no clue who I was. And, I reached out to and said, hey, can you meet for coffee? I need to make an amends to you. I've started meetings to make amends. The amends process for me, just, what I've gotten out of the amends process is I can sit here and say to you, I'm sorry that I lied. I'm sorry that I stole from you. Obviously, they were much more thorough, but and the important piece is that I change my behavior, right? So like I say, I make amends for these things, and then I don't continue to be that person. And then steps 10, 11, and 12, the maintenance steps. 10 is about maintaining my relationship with self. 11 is about maintaining my relationship with God. And 12 is about maintaining my relationship with others. And when I can do those three things, I can have a pretty spiritual, peaceful day. And so heroin was my best friend, right? And you take my best friend away from me and don't give me something better, and I am a dead person, and HA, this program, these steps, my higher power, like that is the answer for me today, right? It has given me a life beyond my wildest dreams. And like that includes like going to work every day and like, driving a car. I didn't have a license for 7 years, having honest, meaningful relationships in my life today. But like, and it's given me so many things back, but like the greatest gift that this program has given me is just freedom, right? Like freedom from the voices in my head that tell me that I am a piece of shit and that I'm not good enough, and, because of this program, I've got a beautiful relationship with my mother today. She trusts me again, which is just a miracle. With almost 7 years sober, my sister still does not talk to me for the damage that I did while I was out there. But because of this program, I no longer need my sister's love and acceptance. And like, that is huge for me, right? Like these steps have like allowed me to learn to love myself. And, I didn't need to wake up and put a needle in my arm today. And that is a miracle. And I am just so grateful to this program for that. So thanks for letting me share.